Hello and welcome to the Northern Roses YouTube channel. I'm Henry, sat here with my brother Adam,
Hi everyone, I'm Adam North.
and we wanted to really take this opportunity to introduce ourselves, a bit about the Northern Rose and how we got into this situation of really wanting to start a media organisation from Manchester, but also towards like the left space. Yeah, so I'll go first.
Yeah.
So for me, it all started really 2 years ago when I was doing a MA in international journalism from Salford, and throughout my time in or studying the masters, I found like it was very good in terms of the technical stuff that it taught me. But as I was studying the media landscape, I really wanted to be a journalist in Manchester and feel like it kind of the stories were part of a kind of national dialogue, or we were kind of looking at Manchester but in the bigger picture, and I didn't feel like there was anything really out there that was allowing me to do that. And when I was spending time in places like the New Broadcasting House and BBC, but also at Tortoise Media, which has now taken over the Observer, I really appreciated how much of the national dialogue is London centric, really, and I felt like a lot of local news is getting totally left behind. So that was a big point for me, but also I think for me, I wanted to really set up something that we were quite transparent about what we were doing. It wasn't this idea of objectivity. We were setting our stall out to be subjective, and I think because I'm a big fan of Latin America literature and authors, and particularly Eduardo Galeano, and they're in other parts of the world they accept that objectivity isn't really a thing. Whatever news you choose to report about, I think, is an expression. So that was really kind of why I wanted to start this Substack podcast and now YouTube channel.
Yeah. I think it's all about making a platform, because when we think about what media we all get and consume, a lot of it is not coming from a position of improving, I think, our lives. It's about, economic growth. It's about making the country a good place, accommodating place for the very, very wealthy. And this isn't about like people who work hard to maybe buy a house. This is about people who own so much that they don't have to work. So you're billionaires who can earn passive income of millions of pounds a month, and that's just on their assets. And so most of the media now is owned by these people, like your Rupert Murdochs and various others, Elon Musk. They own the media, so they own what we see, the news that we consume, and we're interested in kind of pushing back against that. And we've seen the success of media channels like Gary's Economics and various others, Navarro Media, Politics Joe, like all of these kind of start-up media platforms that I think actually talk to what people are experiencing. So I think our hope is to have a northern point of view there, because these are not to say, these are great channels. Don't get me wrong, you should watch them, you should listen to them, but they don't give the northern perspective that we hope to do. And we're speaking from Manchester, and we have an interest in Manchester, and we want to make this a platform for northern contributors, although we hope to work with contributors from all over the country, and that does mean London. Our focus is very much how can we make the north a better place, because it is an area that doesn't receive the attention it deserves. I even remember Andy Burnham was saying a couple of weeks ago that he said to people in Westminster, this is how much a bus in Manchester costs, and they were like, what? That's crazy. It's and it's like there is no, well, I say there is no, but there is a real kind of London centricness and a kind of I think because Parliament is based in London as well, you can almost get away with ignoring the north to a much greater extent. Although whether that's seen in general elections and things, I think we're starting to see that isn't the case. But northerners, many feel left behind and feel disaffected with politics, and I think that distrustfulness only leads to worse politicians. it only leads to those who feed on that distrust. And I think we're interested in hopefully maybe trying to rebuild that political trust. And obviously you need politicians who do things that make you trust them. And I think that's why we're very much for things like a wealth tax and progressive measures that make the country a better place, not for the ultra wealthy, but for everyone. And that's the middle class and the working class. That's the 99% as it's known.
Yeah, and I think through what Adam was saying there, from our guests on our podcast so far, we kind of demonstrating what we're trying to set out to do. I think one of our two best podcasts is the ones that we've had with guests. And our first one was with Dr. John Mulligan, a Unite representative, and he talked about the mental health care crisis in Manchester. But through that, we were then able to kind of talk about more systematic problems within the UK. And our most recent podcast has been with Joe Wright from Tax Justice UK. And he's probably more of like based in the south of England, but the issues that he was talking about raising tax revenue, that is a nationwide problem. So even though that it's not, I guess, especially regional, that it's a national problem that we're trying to fix.
Yeah, because there's two kind of key things, isn't there? I think that a lot of the local problems that people are experiencing worldwide or throughout the Western world are caused because of the same kind of systemic problems. So there are certain problems that we all face. I think one of them is who faces the taxation burden is a problem across the Western world. But then there are individual community-based problems, such as in your city, where is funding concentrated? Who gets a voice? Who receives the best public transport? Local corruption. Are politicians in a local area being corrupt? So there are bigger issues that I think Manchester, London, Birmingham, Liverpool, cities across the Western world, Sydney, Melbourne, all face, and it's important I think we address them, but there's also Manchester specific problems that we want to get into and deal with and make a city that I think anyone who lives here would agree is a great place to live, but there are certain issues that it faces with, I guess, the sort of exploding population in the centre and how wealth is concentrated and distributed that also we want to deal with. And it's not all focused on wealth and class, but issues of representation, of mental health, of who gets to build what and where, how culture and how history is represented, and all those kind of issues that we think are important to preserving the sense of community and identity.
Yeah, and I think we maybe take the opportunity now just to introduce ourselves or give a bit of a backstory about ourselves now. So, yeah, I mentioned briefly that I'd done an MA in international journalism from Salford, and before that, I had done a undergrad degree from the University of York in philosophy and politics. And I've done a bit of travelling here and there, so I've seen kind of how certain issues kind of keep on reproducing or replicating themselves in different parts. And yeah, I've just also wanted to say that, for example, Gary Stevenson likes to say that he isn't, for those of you familiar with him, that he isn't political, he's just a very good economist. Whereas I'd like to say that I am political, and I consider myself really a political philosopher because that was really my area of interest at my degree. So when you might read the articles that we put up or listen to our podcasts or watch our videos, I think that what we're trying to do here is really kind of address a more deeper foundational idea of the decisions that are made in politics. So it's kind of looking at more systematic approaches to what we're doing here.
Yeah, and we had an article on the Northern Rose a couple of weeks ago now, which asked the kind of question, and it's a bit of a provocative question, but is everything religion and politics? And I think really what Gary Stevenson is doing is clearly political. What we're doing here, clearly political. What every media organisation is doing is clearly political. So everything in my opinion, is an invitation to politics and religion. And if you say it's not, it's kind of saying I'm not interested, or I don't want to talk about those kind of things. And for everyone, that's kind of understandable, depending on what you're going through. If you're if you're working a hard 9 to 5 and you just want to go home and watch telly and not have to think about those kind of things, then that I completely understand that. But this is about trying to build a world in which maybe that 9 to 5 doesn't exhaust you, in which you can go back and you can have space and time to build your hobbies or build your interests. Because I think what the left of politics want is to build a world that is better for everyone, where you have less time that you need to work and more time to cultivate your hobbies, your personality, all those kind of things that you would see as kind of extra work activities. Whereas I think the right of politics is more about you working hard and the reward of that isn't necessarily there, which I suppose fits those people who benefit from your work. Whereas, if the harder you work but don't see the rewards of that, especially in the work-life balance, I don't think that's I think that kind of view of the world's been proven to have failed since the 80s.
Yeah, so I think what Adam was maybe touching on there was a little bit of a, would you say, Marxist analysis between the owners of capital and the workers there.
Well, there's definitely that's part of the issue is who owns the places in which we work. But I'll just say quickly, because to touch on my expertise. So I'm Dr. Adam North. So I am qualified I have a PhD in religions and theology, which I like to say I'm an expert in political theology, because I'm interested in the intersection of politics and religion, how religious ideas influence politics, but also how secular ideas within politics employ similar sort of religious strategies. So I think you see a clear example of this is Donald Trump, who was nearly assassinated, and there's been a few assassination attempts on him, and you see this religious idea of him being built up that he was saved by God, and his mission is a religious one, and that is convincing for a significant proportion of US voters. And so I think that this intersection of religion and politics for me is a supremely important one. And even the ideas that we have of our own country and our own ideology intersect with religion, because I think people have certain ideas of capitalism and just sort of these ingrained ideas of what is or isn't true. Like this idea of that we live in a meritocracy. The harder you work, the better your job, the better your pay, doesn't exist anymore. For lots of people, maybe you are one of the lucky people who the harder you work, the more you can progress. But I'm sure someone, or you are yourself someone, who has realised that the harder you work does not necessarily equate to a better standard of living.
Yeah, so our plan is really to take you, the audience, along with us as we kind of develop this idea of kind of this approach of a lefty kind of political foundation, philosophical foundation, and as we go and we meet people along the way. So I mentioned the 2 guests that we had already had, but hopefully as we get more into Manchester, more guests, and nationally, that really we can see how far we can go with this. And I think it's something that I'm looking forward to, and hopefully the channel can grow and more people we can meet.
And just to send, clearly this new media on YouTube, on TikTok, and on social media, it has tremendous power. Like Joe Rogan has been able to influence elections. Gary Stevenson will influence taxation policy and influence government direction. Like, we're not saying that, we think we'll be able to do that, but what we want to do is hopefully contribute, and your views and your input can help us direct that. And hopefully, we can have guests on, and we can help push those guests to gain more attention or things like that. And there's no there's no potential limit to how much power these kind of platforms can have. And so hopefully with some help from you, we can maybe just have a small but important kind of addition to the ecosystem.
Yeah, so I think that's probably a good point to leave it for this episode. Always sound like a bit of a club rep at this point, but that being said, if you like what we've kind of really talked about today, we would very much appreciate a subscribe or a like. And if you want to read more about what we're doing, you can head over to our Substack at www.thenorthernrose.com. Would you like to add anything else?
So good. Thanks for listening and watching.
Goodbye.
Bye.